All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about online access codes for universities. I did make a video on this about 6 months ago where I talked about a ton of issues that I have with it. First of all, that it's priced at just an insane amount, especially when we're already paying so much money to go to schools. The fact that we can only go and do our homework if we are paying for these services. Like, you can easily just go ahead and submit it online without paying for a service. Like, it's not that hard. You can make a Word document, a Google document that contains all the homework, and yet these teachers are opting for these online resources that cost $120 per class per term. Just huge issues with that. It's a massive scam, and we're already paying so much money. But again, that video will be down in the description down below. I would recommend you watch that before this, but there have been plenty of updates. I've been doing a little bit more research, and there's actually been an email that has come out from a professor that talks about some of these issues. So I do have it on my screen to the left here, but it is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm gonna go through some of the highlights of this email, what was said, go into some of the details, and then we're actually going to look at a few of the responses from someone high up at Arizona State University that responded to this email. So let's start with this. Again, guys, this is an economics teacher at Arizona State University. His name is Brian. I'm not going to be able to pronounce the last name, probably Gogin or something like that. But basically what he says is, for the past few years, the economics department has been enforcing two policies I believe to be unethical, and I feel obligated to disclose them with you. One more thing I will add, I'll leave the links to these articles in the description down below. There are tons of articles out there. You can obviously just Google it, but I will post them in the description. So, yes, to continue, he says, in order to convince Cengage to give Provost a large monetary grant, the department agreed to require all Econ 211 and 212 students to use MindTap, which is a Cengage product. This deal requires students to pay just to turn in their homework. Instructors who are making the assignments available on Blackboard and Canvas have been forced to move the same assignments behind the MindTap paywall to ensure students must pay Cengage to pass the class. So that's exactly like I was saying. The professor here, who literally works at Arizona State University, or used to rather, you'll see later, he doesn't anymore, but these things like Blackboard and Canvas, pretty much all universities use it, and many teachers just post their homework and even quizzes, tests, and things like that on Canvas, and it's free to use. Technically free, I mean, you're paying for it by paying the school, but there's no added cost, I should say, to use Canvas because your school already includes it most of the time, almost all the time. And that's like what a lot of my teachers have done. In fact, I was in an accounting class. I was in one accounting class that was 316 and one accounting class that was 317. And I kid you not, at the same time, one teacher was using one of the Cengage products and the other teacher was not. He was just using Canvas, and it was basically the same assignments, like of course different material, but the same exact structure for the assignments. And one teacher made it free and it was no problem, was easy to use on Canvas, same exact flow, and the other was using the MindTap or the Cengage product. I can't remember exactly which one. It might have even been one of the other online access type of things, but the same thing goes. It's one of those paywall, do your homework type of products. And it's honestly just absolutely ridiculous that these products or these assignments would be pretty much the same thing, and I had to pay $120 extra just to turn in my homework for one of them, and the other teacher just let me do it on Canvas. Like, seriously, there's something unethical going there, and this teacher highlights that. I mean, he could post the same things before on Canvas, so why he's being forced to move to this? You'd have to think there's a deal going on with the universities, kind of signing up to make sure Cengage gets some money, which he does go on to talk about more. Let's keep going here. He says students are being saddled with unnecessary costs so the provost can fund a pet project. The second policy was put in place to ensure that the provost projects was made to look good. All Econ 211, 212, and 221 courses were required to prevent at least 30% of students from passing the class. We were told that we needed to set a baseline against which the provost projects could be compared. For many instructors, this meant setting up students to fail so it could seem like the provost swooped in and fixed the problem that didn't exist. Now, that is just mind-blowing. They're literally saying that other people wanted to look better, so they had to fail students to make them look stupid just to make the new people look better. And these these people are probably doing just fine on their test scores. Of course, some people are going to end up failing the class, but 30% minimum were basically needing to fail the class. And you could have things be done like certain tests. The average might be a totally passing grade, but the way they set it up and the way they will end up grading the questions, especially ones that are written, that can be taken rather than just a multiple choice question, that can be judged on a different basis. They were just going to give them lower points just to make sure they met that quota, which is just insane. He continues to go on and say, I found both of these policies to be highly unethical, and I said so to Dean Hillman. In response, the economics department has decided to let me go. I'm hoping all of you can continue this fight against this corruption. I hope you would do so in 2 ways. And he says, send an email to President Crow and Dean Hillman, basically asking that this should never happen and change these policies, and then forward this email to other students who are not majoring in economics, but they need to be updated. They need to know that this is going on in some of the classes, and that's very true because some classes, they don't use these products. I've noticed that most of the classes that use these paywall products are math related, kind of business related. I have taken plenty of other courses, lots of journalism courses that don't really use these type of products. So I don't know why it's mainly with the business and economic side of things. Maybe that's just where it's starting and where it's easiest to convince people to do so. But it is a huge problem and a ton of people are being affected. This teacher felt so strongly about it that he basically lost his job over it. It's a complete scam. He says so here. He says that they were able to do it for free in a different way using Canvas, and he just wouldn't be allowed to because he has to make sure that they're using Cengage to pass the class so that they have to do their homework there. Otherwise, they're not going to get any points. And apparently ASU had a deal set up just to make sure that they were getting the money through exactly how they wanted. Finally, the teacher does end by saying, it may not seem like much, but I promise you that if you send an email now, it will spur real action on the issue. Sincerely, Brian. So that's just unbelievable. Now, I do want to go to some other articles now. All right, now we are going to move on to the news article that I found. There are quite a few, like I said, but we're going to be looking at one from edsurge.com. It's an education-related website with, of course, many articles. So this has a little bit of stuff from students that were responding to this, as well as, more importantly, responses from the online access code website and companies, as well as higher up people at Arizona State University. So with that being said, let's jump into this. We do have the first piece that I want to talk about, which just reports a little bit of numbers. It says, of course, that ASU is huge. It has more than 13,000 students each year enrolled in either Econ 211 or 212. So that is a lot of money involved in this deal, of course. 13,000 people are paying around, $120 for a term of this access, which is just insane. Again, just shows that there's a lot of power in there with a lot of money flowing around. So I do want to say one thing from what one student says. It says that she praises the email that the professor sent this week and the protest he is making. She said, I can't believe that someone finally spoke out about it. I look up a lot of things that I need to know, and it's right there on Google for free, or you can find videos on how to do it. I'm so tired of spending pointless money. So clearly that's some of the stuff I was talking about. You can just find a lot of this stuff for free. You don't need the textbooks, which are trying to be bundled in to the online access codes. But I think, of course, the most important thing is the fact that your homework is bundled in. So it's one thing if you just want to, study by yourself without a textbook. If you're just naturally very smart, you can remember everything from lectures. Of course, you won't need a textbook, but it doesn't matter how smart you are. If you don't have the access codes, you can't do the homework, which means you're going to miss out on probably at least around 15% of your grade just for not being able to do the homework unless you dish out the money, which is just ridiculous. But this part, guys, I just cannot believe this. It almost makes me want to puke. This is what the textbook publishers say in response to this. They say that the days of the $300 textbook are over. Senior Vice President of Strategy of Business Operations for Pearson, who says the future is lower cost digital tools where content is bundled in. The good story on this is that the prices are coming down on our learning materials. And he argues that it is unfair to refer to these new online products as just a way to turn in homework. This isn't about scanning some PDFs and calling it a day. These are immersive digital products. which is just ridiculous. If you're talking immersive, dragging and dropping something into a box or something, or making a graph on a computer, I mean, you could do that on paper. Everybody's been doing that on paper for years. I've done that on paper in other classes that I don't have to use this. So they're really reaching there, trying to call it some magical new thing, that it's a digital immersive product, which is just completely them trying to reach for a reasonable reason why they're paying so much for this stuff. But my favorite part is when he says students cramming in a semester's worth of homework during the 2-week trial period is a very small use case. And I think that if a student does that, the question is, should the student be in the class? Maybe they could place out. What is that even supposed to mean? I don't know any university that's going to say, oh, you can do the homework in 2 weeks, you can place out of the class. And if you're doing that, if you're using the 2-week trial and cramming in all the homework, should you even be in the class? That has no correlation. The whole point is literally just that it costs so much money. Students are going to do whatever it takes to try to avoid this. Do all the homework at once if you're allowed to. Most classes do lock it kind of like week per week, so you can't even do that. But for some of the classes that you can do that, students are literally cramming it all in 2 weeks, trying to learn all the content, which, if we're going to be honest, you're not going to be learning all the content in 2 weeks. Clearly, you're going to be looking stuff up. You're going to be doing control find through the whole textbook, trying to find the answers. So all the arguments for this are just complete BS, because you're never going to learn the content that fast. If you are cramming in the homework in 2 weeks, you're clearly defeating the purpose that the professor wants to portray, because you're not going to learn anything. And of course, that honestly destroys the purpose of paying for the textbook service, because you're just going to abuse the free trial period. And that's just ridiculous that students even have to think like that, to use a 2-week trial to get everything done just so they can avoid this. That shows how much money these things cost and how stupid it is. And he goes on to say that the reason we offer the trial period is because we want to make sure students actually need the product. We don't want to charge them for something they don't need. And if students are on financial aid, sometimes financial aid doesn't come in time for the classes to start. Again, it's just more BS. Like, what is he trying to say here? We actually want to make sure they need the product, and if they do, oh great, we can scam your money. Like, that doesn't help anybody. It's still the same thing. If your financial aid comes late, okay, well, what if it doesn't come for another 3 weeks? The 2 weeks is supposed to be a magical number. There's just a lot of things like that that's just super stupid, and I can't believe the textbook publishers try to respond with stuff like this, thinking that it's going to solve anything. And basically, what ASU tried to respond, some of the people higher up, of course, were saying that some of this stuff just isn't true, that the 30% rule isn't actually true, and they didn't do that, but other students were coming to the aid of the professor and saying that they've seen it with their own eyes, that it clearly did happen, and also that they don't have a business deal in place for Econ 211 and 212, or whatever the classes were, to be paying. But that doesn't make any sense, because as you'll see in this article, it says the situation at ASU became more muddled this week when student government leaders unearthed a revenue-sharing deal between the university and Cengage to jointly build a different MindTap product for economics. Now, this isn't the same tool that the professor was being asked to assign, but it does represent a business relationship between the university and the publisher, which is very true. If we're finding more stuff as we keep researching more and more that keeps showing that the university and Cengage has deals, it doesn't matter if one product is wrapped into the deal or not. They have a relationship. They're always going to be doing stuff like this, whether it's in paper or not, to try to benefit each other. And I'm just very glad that the professor, actually decided to say something, and that it's getting a little bit more exposure, because, it's one thing to charge so much for the textbooks, but if you get to keep it, if you don't have to pay for your homework, it's one thing. I still think it's ridiculous. I still think it's obviously well overpriced, but when we're talking about maybe 3-month subscription for $120 just so you can get your homework points, something's not right there. It's either teachers being lazy because they don't want to deal with writing their own homework, just throw it off to Cengage, they can handle it. Of course, I don't think that's what's usually going on. I think it's more that the universities have a deal, as we can see here with ASU and Cengage, that teachers are being forced to do this because there's a business deal in place. And then, of course, you have things like the failure rate quota that needs to be that needs to be met. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So guys, with that being said, I just wanted to share with you some of that information that I found, some of these articles and emails. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it just proves my point from the last video, some of the awful scams that are going on with these online access textbooks and homework codes. So with that being said, guys, please do drop a like on the video. I would appreciate it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Plenty more videos on the channel about probably this topic at some point, but of course other videos about my life and college and whatnot. So I would appreciate that. And of course, follow me on social media. They will be on the screen and in the description down below. That would be awesome. Stay up to date there. And that'll be it. Comment down below what you thought, and I'll see you later. Peace.